Have you ever dreamed of holding your child for the first time, only to have someone you love walk away the moment that child opens their eyes? What would you do if the color of your baby's skin shattered the life you'd spent years building? This story isn't easy to hear, but it's one you won't forget. A white couple, desperate for children, celebrates the birth of quadruplets, only to discover that all 4 babies have dark skin. The father's reaction? Cold, calculated, final. "They're not ours," he said. And just like that, 4 lives were left behind before they'd even been named. But fate doesn't end stories where pain begins. 20 years later, those abandoned babies are thriving, loved, strong, until a letter arrives, unlocking a past no one was ready to face. A mother with a secret, a father with a lie, and children caught in the storm of a truth they never asked for. Where are you watching from today? Stay with me, because the end of this story will challenge everything you believe about family, forgiveness, and what it really means to come home. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and fresh paint, but no amount of sterile cleanliness could mask the tension that gripped Dr. Evelyn James's chest. Her white coat flared around her legs as she walked swiftly toward the family waiting room. Her heels tapped a steady beat on the tile floor, but inside, her pulse was uneven. She had delivered hundreds of babies in her career, seen families weep with joy and sorrow alike. But this would be a conversation that no amount of medical training could prepare her for. She paused at the door. "Breathe," she reminded herself, then pushed it open. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker?" she called softly. A couple stood. Thomas Whitaker was tall, sandy-haired, with the composed look of a man used to being in control. His hand rested protectively on the shoulder of his wife, Lauren, blonde, petite, glowing with the aftermath of labor and expectation. "Are they okay?" Lauren asked quickly. "The babies, how are they?" Dr. James managed a reassuring smile. "Everyone is healthy. All 4 babies came through beautifully. And you, Mrs. Whitaker, you were extraordinary." Lauren's face relaxed. Her hand gripped Thomas's. "Can we see them?" "Of course, but first," Dr. James hesitated. "There's something we need to discuss. In private." She led them to a quiet consultation room, a small space with muted gray walls and a coffee machine that hadn't worked in years. It wasn't ideal, but it would have to do. Once the door closed, Dr. James sat opposite the couple and folded her hands. "What is it?" Thomas asked. His voice was sharp, not fearful but impatient. Too used to being the one asking questions. Dr. James reached into a manila envelope and placed 4 photographs gently on the table. Lauren leaned forward, then froze. Thomas stood behind her, peering over her shoulder. The moment he saw the images, his jaw clenched. 4 newborn babies, still in their hospital blankets, tiny faces barely visible, but unmistakably beautiful, unmistakably black. Lauren's voice cracked. There's been a mistake." Thomas stepped back, his face turning pale. "I'm afraid not," Dr. James said gently. "These are the same embryos implanted during your IVF procedure. Genetically, the fertilization was successful, but—" "There's no way," Thomas snapped. "We selected donors who matched our profiles. Blonde, blue eyes, not this." He shoved the photos away. "I understand this is a shock," Dr. James said, "but it appears there was a mishandling of donor materials at the fertility clinic. The embryos may have been fertilized with sperm from a different donor than what was recorded, possibly an anonymous African-American donor." Lauren's eyes welled with tears. "But we planned for this. Every step. We waited so long." Dr. James's tone softened. "You have 4 healthy babies. That part is still true." Thomas turned to Lauren. "We're not taking them." Lauren blinked. "What?" "You heard me," he said. "They're not ours. Not really. This is the clinic's fault. We sue them. We don't raise someone else's children." "Thomas?" Lauren's voice trembled. He crossed his arms. "This is a violation. I didn't agree to raise children who look nothing like us. The world won't see them as ours. Do you know what that means? The questions, the looks." Dr. James kept her voice steady. "Mr. Whitaker, This isn't about the world. It's about those 4 children who just took their first breath. They need love, stability. Let someone else provide that, he said coldly. We're walking away. Lauren sat still, her eyes locked on the photographs. They're so small, she whispered. A beat passed. Would you like to see them? Dr. James asked gently. Before Lauren could answer, Thomas pulled her hand. We need to think, alone. He was already heading to the door. Dr. James stood but didn't stop them. Take your time, but please remember, those babies don't get to pause their lives while you decide. The door clicked shut behind them. And just like that, the Whitaker quadruplets were alone in the world. That night, Nurse Raquel Myers found Thomas alone in the nursery wing. He stood over the crib marked Baby A, his arms crossed, expression unreadable. They're beautiful, she said, hoping to spark some emotion. Thomas didn't respond. This was never the plan, he muttered. Children rarely are, Raquel said softly, but sometimes they become the best part of it. His eyes stayed locked on the incubators. We can't take them. My wife agrees. Raquel's stomach turned. But they're yours. You created them, carried them, loved the idea of them. They're not our idea, he said, and they'll never be our reality. He turned without another word. The next morning, the hospital received formal notice. The Whitakers were relinquishing all parental rights. 4 perfectly healthy, beautiful newborns, legally orphaned before ever being named. The babies were still in the nursery when Dr. Evelyn James made the call. She stared at their tiny faces, each one swaddled in a pastel blanket, their dark curls barely covering soft, perfect foreheads. Their eyes blinked, unaware. But she knew time was against them. The longer they stayed unclaimed, the more likely the system would separate them. She pulled out her phone. Monica, she whispered. It's Evelyn. I know it's late, but I think your prayers just got answered. Monica Evans stood frozen in the doorway of the nursery, her hand covering her mouth. Her eyes scanned the cribs, 4 in a perfect row, each marked Baby A, Baby B, Baby C, Baby D. Her sister, Dr. James, placed a hand on her shoulder. They've been here 3 days. No visitors, no names. Their original parents walked away. Monica turned slowly. All 4? Evelyn nodded. Yes, all 4. And the hospital wants to keep them together, but the odds of finding one family willing to take quadruplets. She trailed off, letting the unspoken truth hang in the air. Monica's eyes didn't leave the babies. For years, she and Derek had applied to agencies. Waitlisted. Rejected. Demographic mismatch, they were told, a polite way of saying their age and race didn't match most birth parent requests. She reached for her phone. Derek Evans was in their modest kitchen, packing his school bag for the next day, when his phone rang. He answered with a tired, "Hey, babe," but Monica's voice held something electric. "Derek, can you come to the hospital?" He paused. "Are you okay?" I think I'm about to be." 2 hours later, Derek stood beside Monica in the quiet hospital nursery. His brown eyes scanned the 4 sleeping newborns. "Are you serious?" he whispered. "I've never been more," Monica replied. "They need a home." He exhaled slowly. "We don't even have 4 car seats." "We don't even have 1, she laughed softly. "But I've already spoken to the social worker. We can foster immediately while paperwork moves forward. Emergency placement." Derek looked at the babies again. 4. 4, Monica repeated. She took his hand. "Derek, this isn't what we planned, but maybe this is better than anything we could have imagined." He looked at her, really looked, and saw the fire in her eyes, the one he hadn't seen in months, maybe years. "You sure?" he asked. She nodded, a tear sliding down her cheek. He grinned. "Then I guess we'd better go buy some diapers." The next morning, as sunlight warmed the hospital nursery, Monica leaned over each crib, whispering a name. "Alan," she said softly to Baby A, "because you'll be strong." "Zaria," she whispered to Baby B, "for the beauty I already see in you." "Isaiah," she told Baby C, "you'll grow wise, I can feel it." "And Diane," she said, stroking Baby D's tiny cheek. Our peacekeeper. Dr. James watched from the doorway, heart full. 4 names. 4 chances at a different life. Within 48 hours, the quadruplets were strapped gently into borrowed car seats in the back of the Evans' aging minivan. Neighbors waved as they pulled into their driveway, then ran inside to gather what they could. Cribs, diapers, gift cards, love. The Evans' small home became a symphony of cries and lullabies. The living room transformed into a nursery, the guest room filled with bassinets. Their bedroom echoed with midnight feedings and whispered prayers. It was chaos. It was beautiful. It was theirs. Late one night, Derek rocked Isaiah to sleep while Monica dozed nearby with Zaria curled on her chest. The twins' soft breaths filled the room. Derek looked over, his voice barely above a whisper. What if we're not enough for them? Monica stirred. Then we love them harder. He smiled, kissed Isaiah's forehead, and whispered, Welcome home, son. Marta Whitaker sat motionless in the driver's seat of her white Mercedes SUV, the engine still running, though she hadn't moved in over an hour. The hospital loomed behind her, sterile and bright, its windows glowing against the fading dusk. But inside the car, everything was dim, still, suffocating. In her lap, she clutched a tiny knit hat, ivory white with a pale blue ribbon. She had made it herself. Months ago, back when she imagined holding her babies in a sunlit nursery, singing lullabies and rocking them to sleep. She had knitted 4 of them, 1 for each child she'd longed for. But she had never placed those hats on their heads. Not one. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks, soaking into the yarn as she stared at the hospital entrance. Thomas had made it sound so simple. They're not ours. It'll be easier this way. You can't let emotions cloud your judgment. He'd insisted she not see them. It'll make it harder to walk away, he warned. But it was already hard, unbearably hard. She had felt every movement inside her, had listened to their heartbeats, had whispered promises to them in the dark, long before they had names. And now, they were gone. Not dead, not harmed, just gone. And she had let it happen. Marta pressed the baby hat to her lips. I'm sorry, she whispered. To whom? She wasn't sure. To herself? To the 4 lives she hadn't even touched? She didn't know how to go home after this, or if home was even a place that existed anymore. She closed her eyes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. The ache in her chest was heavy, unrelenting. Then, without meaning to, she imagined them. 4 tiny faces staring up at strangers, crying, needing. And no one saying, Mama's here? She gasped for air, shaking. Thomas had made his choice, but she had been too afraid to make hers. She turned the key in the ignition. As the car rolled out of the lot, Marta didn't know where she was going. But she knew one thing for certain. She had just made the worst mistake of her life, and it would haunt her for years to come. The Evans household never knew silence again, and that was exactly how Monica liked it. In the first year, their modest 3-bedroom home in South Shore was filled with the sounds of rattles, lullabies, and midnight cries. By year 2, those cries turned into giggles echoing down the hallway like music. By year 3, footsteps thundered through every room, sometimes in chaos, sometimes in harmony, but always together. They had survived the first storm, 4 toddlers learning to walk. Barely. Monica and Derek were tired, always tired. But when they watched their children huddle on the couch during story time, tiny heads resting on shoulders that matched in skin but danced in personality, all the exhaustion faded. The quadruplets grew fast. Alan was the first to climb out of his crib and the first to teach the others how. He was bold, brave, a born leader. Zaria loved crayons and walls. She drew before she spoke, and by age 4, she was already creating swirling patterns that left guests in awe, and Monica repainting the hallway. She's not coloring on walls, Monica said once. She's expanding her canvas. Isaiah was quieter, always observing. He'd sit in corners with books meant for kids twice his age, flipping pages with careful fingers. He asked questions that made Derek pause. Do stars die too? Why do people cry when they're happy? And Diane, dear Diane, was the glue. She hated arguments, loved hugs, and somehow always knew which of her siblings needed a gentle touch or soft word. By 5, she was the peacemaker. By 6, she was the soul of the home. They had their own beds, but almost always ended up in the same room. They celebrated birthdays with 4 cakes. Because Zaria hated chocolate, Alan insisted on vanilla, Isaiah liked strawberry, and Diane always picked carrot cake just to be different. Family photos became impossible. Too much wiggling, too many giggles, always someone blinking. But they captured joy, chaos, unity. At school, they made a name for themselves. Teachers called them the Miracle Four. Alan joined the Little League team and outran every kid on the field. Zaria's art was chosen for the district-wide showcase. Isaiah won the spelling bee in 2nd grade, quietly, almost apologetically. Diane organized a toy drive in 3rd grade, so kids who didn't get adopted could still get something nice. At home, Monica and Derek watched with quiet pride. Their house was always cluttered. Laundry never ended. Diapers turned to backpacks, then to scattered sneakers and overdue library books. But love was everywhere. In the crayon-marked walls, in the bedtime songs that changed lyrics every night, in the tiny notes Diane left on their pillows, "Thank you for choosing us." They had questions sometimes, about where they came from, why no one looked exactly like Mom or Dad. But Monica answered gently, "You came to us exactly as you were meant to." No lies, but not the whole truth either. Not yet. One evening, after a school event, Monica opened the mail and paused. Inside was a newspaper clipping. The quadruplets, lined up on stage, smiling in their school uniforms. There was no return address, just a sticky note. "They're beautiful." She stared at it for a long time, then folded it up and placed it in the family scrapbook, just between their first drawing and the photo of the day they came home. It began with a tremor, barely noticeable at first. Derek's hand would shake slightly while buttering toast or tying his shoelaces. He'd laugh it off, blame caffeine, age, stress. But Monica noticed. So did Isaiah. And when Derek dropped a glass at dinner one night, his hand trembling even after the pieces were swept up, Monica made the appointment without asking. The neurologist's office was quiet, sterile, too bright. Derek sat beside her, fingers laced with hers, a rare nervous energy in his normally calm eyes. The diagnosis landed like a stone in Monica's stomach. Early onset Parkinson's, progressive, manageable. For now. Monica squeezed his hand tighter. "I'm okay," he said gently. "We're okay." But even as he said it, she saw the shadows forming behind his smile. They didn't tell the kids right away. How do you explain to children that the strongest person in their world is beginning to change? But they noticed. Alan came home early from track practice. Zaria stopped asking to be driven places and took up biking instead. Isaiah researched Parkinson's quietly on the school computer, printing articles and leaving them on the coffee table without a word. Diane started following Derek from room to room. "Just in case," she said, always with a smile. The family adjusted. Medication helped, so did patience. But the rhythm of the house shifted. Tasks once done without thought now took longer. Derek's voice sometimes trembled. His handwriting grew slanted and slow. And still, he taught. He showed up. He danced in the kitchen with Monica when the kids weren't looking. One evening, as spring winds carried laughter through their backyard, Derek watched his children, now pre-teens, racing across the grass. Alan tackled Isaiah to the ground, laughing. Zaria painted on the fence, with Monica's hesitant permission. Diane built a picnic setup under the big oak tree. "I don't want them to grow up afraid," Derek said, his voice thick. Monica leaned against him. "They won't. They'll grow up knowing how to love through hard things." He nodded slowly. The tremor was there again, a flutter in his fingers. Monica reached down and held his hand steady, not to stop the shaking, but to remind him they were still solid, still standing, still together. The letter came in a plain white envelope. No return address, no bold lettering, just quiet finality. Monica found it buried in a stack of mail between a utility bill and a church flyer. She almost tossed it aside until she saw the name of the clinic in the top left corner. Her hands stiffened. Derek looked up from the kitchen table where he was grading math tests. "What is it?" She opened the letter slowly, reading in silence. Then she sat down. "They're closing," she said. Derek furrowed his brow. "Who?" "The fertility clinic," she answered. "The one involved in all of it." She slid the letter across the table. He read it twice. The message was short. The clinic was shutting down permanently. As part of their legal obligations, they were notifying all involved parties that donor records and case files would be transferred to a national genetic registry. When the children turned 18, they would have access to the data. And if both parties agreed, contact could be initiated. Monica's breath caught. Derek said nothing for a long time. "What does this mean?" he finally asked. Monica stared at the letter. "It means that someday our children could find her." She didn't say Marta's name. She didn't have to. "And vice versa," Derek added quietly. Neither of them touched the letter again that night. Miles away, in a small townhouse outside Evanston, Marta stood in her own kitchen reading the exact same letter. Her fingers trembled as she held it. When the children turn 18, contact may be initiated by either party. She hadn't dared to hope, not for years, but now the law was opening a door, one she had sealed shut in shame. She read the letter again, then pressed it flat against the countertop. Her eyes burned. Would they hate her? Would they even want to know her? She didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing. She would be ready when the time came. Senior year arrived like a freight train. College brochures flooded the mailbox. Recommendation letters piled up on the dining table. Monica turned the living room into a scholarship application station, complete with color-coded folders and snacks labeled fuel. Each child moved in their own rhythm. Alan had just returned from a track meet, first place again. His dream, Howard University, full ride, Division I athletics. Zaria was sorting through art school offers like she was flipping tarot cards, RISD, SCAD, and a full-ride scholarship to a local university's visual design program. Her fingers were always stained with paint. Isaiah already had his acceptance letter from MIT. He left it on the fridge as if it were nothing, but Monica caught him rereading it late at night, a soft smile on his face. Diane was quiet. She moved through the motions, grades solid, applications in, but something sat behind her eyes. Something unreadable. It wasn't until a Tuesday night, over a half-eaten pizza, that Monica noticed her distracted silence. "Anything you want to share, baby?" she asked gently. Diane blinked. "I've been thinking." 4 pairs of eyes turned toward her. "About where we came from." A stillness settled over the table. "We know," she said quickly, "that we were adopted, and we know we're loved. But I also know that there was a lawsuit against the clinic. I found it online." Alan leaned back in his chair. "You what?" "I looked it up," Diane admitted. "There's public information. It said a white couple abandoned black children at birth. Us." Isaiah exhaled slowly. Zaria's eyes filled with quiet worry. Monica placed her hands on the table. "We were going to talk to you, all of you, after your 18th birthday." "Why wait?" Diane asked. "You always said we could ask anything." "You can," Derek said, his voice gentle but firm. "We just wanted you to have a little more time before knowing how it all began." Diane nodded. "I understand. I'm not mad. I want to know." Later that night, in the soft glow of her bedroom lamp, Diane sat cross-legged on her bed, scrolling through the donor-sibling registry. She didn't know exactly what she was searching for. A name, a story, a clue that tied her somewhere beyond the walls of this house. She found the database's profile page. She hovered over the Create Account button, then closed the laptop. Not yet, she thought. But the questions weren't going away. They were just Beginning. The living room was quiet, too quiet for a Friday night. No TV, no music, no laughter from the kitchen. Just the heavy silence that follows a bomb that hasn't exploded yet. Alan sat on the arm of the couch, arms crossed tight. Zarya curled into the corner, legs drawn up, her sketchbook forgotten on the floor. Isaiah stood near the fireplace, pacing slightly, a habit when he was nervous. Diane sat upright in the center, eyes forward, resolute. Monica and Derek faced them from the love seat, Monica holding Derek's hand as if anchoring both of them. "We know," Diane said softly. "We know you weren't our first parents." Monica inhaled slowly. "You've always been our children, but yes, we weren't there the day you were born." "You were abandoned," Derek added, voice steady. "In the hospital, hours after delivery." Alan's jaw clenched. "Why?" "They were expecting white babies," Monica said. "When you were born with brown skin, her voice faltered. "They chose to walk away." Zarya covered her mouth. Her eyes brimmed with tears. "Like, left us? Just like that?" Monica nodded. "Your biological mother, she didn't fight him, at least not enough. They signed away their rights. You were left without names, without anyone." "And you just took us?" Alan's voice was sharp now, defensive. "No," Monica said quietly. "We were asked. My sister, Dr. Evelyn James, delivered you. When she heard what happened, she called us." Derek picked up the thread. "We had been trying to adopt for years, always turned away for some reason or another. Too old, not the right profile. But when she called and said, 'There are 4 babies here who need a home,' we came that night," Monica whispered, "and never looked back." Isaiah stopped pacing. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked. "Before now?" "We wanted to protect you," Derek said. "You were too young to carry someone else's shame." Alan stood. "That wasn't your choice." "You're right," Monica said, rising slowly. "We should have trusted you with the truth sooner." There was a long pause. Then Diane asked the question everyone had been avoiding. "Do you know her name?" Monica hesitated. "Yes, Marta. Marta Whitaker." Zarya blinked. "Do you know where she is?" "No," Derek lied quickly. Monica shot him a look, a tiny flick of guilt crossing her face. "I think we need time," Isaiah said finally. Alan's voice was quiet but firm. "What if she tries to come back?" Monica held his gaze. "Then we face it, together." The children didn't speak for a moment, but deep down, something had shifted. Truth had entered the room, and it was never leaving. Section 10 of 17. Diane reaches out secretly. The house was still when Diane opened her laptop. It was past midnight. Zarya had fallen asleep with her earbuds in. Isaiah was probably still reading under his covers. Alan had gone for another run, his way of avoiding everything he couldn't punch or outpace. But Diane couldn't sleep. She stared at the screen, the donor sibling registry login page glowing softly in the dark. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She'd created a profile days ago, just in case. Now she was drafting a message. "We are 4, born May 15th, 2005. We are healthy, safe, and loved. If you ever wondered about us, we're here, we're listening." She paused, rereading it. Would they even see it? Would they care? Her heart thudded. Just then, a soft knock. Alan stood in her doorway. "You're up," he said. She clicked the tab closed too quickly. "Couldn't sleep," she replied. He walked in, glanced at the screen, and his jaw tightened. "Are you reaching out to them?" "Just wondering," she said softly. "Don't you want to know?" "I want to forget," he replied. "They threw us away, Di." "I know," she whispered, "but I also know what it's like to not know where you came from." Alan's eyes softened, but only a little. "Be careful," he said finally. "Curiosity can turn into hurt real fast." Then he left. Diane sat alone again, her finger hovering over submit. After a long moment, she closed the laptop. Not tonight. Marta Whitaker sat in her dimly lit office. the weight of the world settling in her chest. The small, minimalist space felt even more isolated now, the framed architectural blueprints of long-past projects hanging crooked on the walls. Everything felt distant. She glanced at the file on her desk, the very same one that had been passed back and forth between her and her lawyer for months now. She hadn't opened it in days. Her fingers hovered over her phone. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but the letter had changed things. The legalities, the paperwork, the open door. She pressed the button. "Mr. Porter." Her lawyer's voice was steady on the other end. "Yes, Miss Whitaker. What can I do for you?" "I need your help. It's time." Her voice was low, almost broken. "You're sure?" Porter's voice softened, like he was expecting this, but didn't want it to happen. "The last time we spoke—" "I know, but now it's different," Marta interrupted. "The fertility clinic. The database is opening. When they turn 18, they'll be able to know everything. I need to be the one to reach out first." There was a long silence. "You know what that means, right?" Mr. Porter asked quietly. "There's no turning back. You'll be in their lives whether they want it or not." "I understand. I've accepted that." Marta stood and walked over to the window, looking out at the city skyline. "I can't let them face it without me. Not anymore." Another pause. Then, finally, "Okay, I'll set up the meeting." Marta's chest tightened. "Thank you." "Good luck, Marta," he said before hanging up. As she placed the phone down, the reality of it hit her. The truth was coming. The reckoning was near. She had no idea what the outcome would be, but she knew one thing for certain. She was ready to face it. The rain came down in sheets, drumming against the windshield of Alan's car as he sat parked across the street from Whitaker Interiors. The building was modern, elegant, a boutique design studio with floor-to-ceiling windows and soft golden light glowing from inside. Her name was etched on the glass in sleek silver letters. Marta Whitaker, Interior Design. So clinical, so composed. Alan's knuckles were white against the steering wheel. He'd followed the email trail on the family laptop, seen the calendar event labeled Meeting Whitaker Norris Saturday. Nobody had told him. Not Diane, not Mom, not even Monica. They were going to meet her without him. So he came alone. He stepped into the rain. The door was unlocked. A small bell chimed as he entered. The studio was quiet, filled with soft light and minimalist decor. Shelves lined with swatches, fabric rolls, and mock-ups. Everything perfect. Except the woman who stepped out from the back room and froze when she saw him. She looked older than he expected, beautiful still, but not untouched. Tired, worn. Her breath caught. "You're one of them," she whispered. "Aren't you?" "Don't," Alan said sharply. "Don't pretend you don't know exactly who I am." Marta stepped forward, slowly. "Which one are you?" "Alan." She blinked. "The one who runs." "I run to escape," he snapped. "Something you seem good at." Marta's expression crumpled. "I never stopped thinking about you, any of you." "You stopped raising us," he spat. "You stopped choosing us. Don't act like you cared." "I did care," she said, tears forming. "But I was afraid." "Of what?" His voice rose. "Of being seen with children who didn't look like you? Of losing your fancy house? Your pathetic husband?" Marta flinched. "Thomas gave me an ultimatum. He said it was the babies or our marriage. I chose wrong." "No," Alan said coldly. "You didn't choose at all. You let him choose for you." She stepped forward. "I've followed your lives. I kept every article, every school photo I could find. I know you won the state championship last year. I saw Diane's speech on youth mental health, Zaria's art show, Isaiah's science fair win." She crossed to her desk and pulled out a worn folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, printed photos, even a grainy video still from local news. Proof. "I never stopped watching," she said, voice shaking. "I just didn't believe I had the right to reach out." Alan stared at the folder, then at her. "You could have fought. You could have said no. You didn't even hold us." "I didn't know how," Marta whispered. "No one teaches you how to recover from a choice like that." "I broke." "Yeah," Alan said, voice thick. "Well, we didn't get to break. We had to grow up with the question, why weren't we good enough?" Marta sat down slowly. You always were. A long silence. Alan turned to leave. There's something else, she said suddenly. He paused. What? I found them, she said quietly. Your genetic parents, the donors. He turned back, stunned. What? Part of the lawsuit settlement gave Thomas access to donor files. I kept them after the divorce. Years later, I hired a private investigator. She looked up at him, eyes shining. Their names are Lila and Matthew Johnson. They're professors now, at Howard. Ellen's breath caught. Howard, that's where... I know, she said. Where you're going. They never knew about us, he asked. She shook her head. No, the clinic broke policy, used all viable embryos from a single donor without consent. They never knew they created 4 lives. Alan stared at her, frozen. You've spoken to them? No, Marta said. I wanted to leave that choice to you, to all of you. Another silence filled the room, heavier than before. Alan's voice was quieter now. Why tell me this? Because you deserve the truth, she said. And because I'm dying. His head snapped up. I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer last fall. Stage 4. It's spreading fast. I wanted to meet you, all of you, before it was too late. Alan sat down. Not because he wanted to, because he suddenly couldn't stand. Marta leaned forward. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want to give you what I couldn't then. Choice, truth, and whatever peace you'll let me offer. He didn't respond. But he didn't leave either. And for now, that was enough. The Evanses' backyard hadn't changed much since childhood. Same cracked patio stones, same worn-out hammock between the oak trees, same garden boxes Monica still swore she'd refill next spring. But now, it felt different. Quieter, like the air was holding its breath. Alan sat on the edge of the patio table, fingers knotted together. Diane, Zaria, and Isaiah gathered around, sensing something unspoken in his posture. Zaria spoke first. You went to see her, didn't you? Alan nodded. No one gasped. No one scolded. They just waited. She's not who I expected, he said. She's not cruel, not cold, just broken. Diane's voice was soft. What did she say? Everything, Alan whispered. About the day we were born, about Dad, Thomas, about why she didn't fight harder. Isaiah leaned forward. Did she apologize? Yes, Alan said. And she didn't ask for anything back. There was a pause. Then Zaria asked the question that shifted the air. Did she tell you who our biological parents are? Alan looked up. Yes. The others stilled. They're professors. At Howard. Married. Black. They never knew we existed. The clinic never told them. Diane's hand flew to her mouth. Howard. You're going there, Isaiah said slowly. Alan nodded. They're both on staff. Marta found them years ago but never reached out. She said it wasn't her choice to make. Zaria shook her head, overwhelmed. How is all of this real? Alan stood, pacing. She's dying. Cancer. She said she just wanted to tell us the truth before... He trailed off. Diane sat very still. Do you believe her? I do, he said. I hated her, still might, but for once someone told the whole truth. No sugar, no hiding. Isaiah looked at the others. What do we do now? Nobody answered right away, but for the first time none of them were looking back. They were looking forward, toward a future that suddenly had more doors than they ever imagined. The Evanses' kitchen had always been the heart of the house. It was where homework turned into dance parties, where lectures softened into hugs, where pancakes were more about healing than breakfast. But tonight, it was quiet. Too quiet. Monica stood by the sink, drying a dish that didn't really need drying. Derek sat at the table, hands folded, the tremor in his right hand visible but ignored. Across from them sat all 4 of their children, older now, but in this moment, they looked like kids again. Not because they were small, but because their eyes were full of things too big to hold. Alan spoke first. We went to see her. Derek raised an eyebrow. Marta? Monica blinked, slowly setting the dish down. She reached out? She asked softly. Alan nodded. She's dying. Stage 4 cancer. She wanted to see us before... Silence. Then Diane added, She told us everything. She told us about the man who left, Zaria said. About the lawsuit, about how she wanted to name us. Isaiah's voice was quiet. She also told us about the Johnsons. Derek looked confused. Who are the Johnsons? Our genetic parents, Diane said. The sperm and egg donors. Monica's breath caught. She found them? Derek asked. Alan nodded. Professors at Howard. They never knew about us. The clinic used their embryos without consent. Monica sat down, slowly. And what do you want to do with this truth? That's what we don't know, Zaria said honestly. We're not running to anyone, Diane added quickly. You are our parents. That hasn't changed. Monica's eyes welled. I need you to know something. We never kept the truth from you to hide it. We did it to protect the childhood we promised you. You gave us everything, Isaiah said. We know that. Derek finally spoke, his voice calm but worn. If you want to meet them, meet them. If you want to walk away, we'll hold your hand while you do. But if there's pain, if it gets messy, you don't go through it alone. Zaria smiled faintly. When did we get so lucky? Monica reached across the table, placing her hand on Diane's. We've been asking ourselves the same question since the day we brought you home. And just like that, the house didn't feel quiet anymore. It felt whole. The room wasn't fancy. Just 4 white walls, a circular table, and enough folding chairs to feel too formal. But it was quiet, neutral, safe, or as safe as a moment like this could be. Marta arrived early. She sat alone at the head of the table, clutching a scarf in her lap, the same pale blue one she had knitted 20 years ago for a baby she never held. Her fingers traced its frayed edge like a nervous tick. The door opened. Monica entered first, her posture graceful but tense, like a lioness stepping into unfamiliar territory. Derek followed, slower, his hand lightly trembling at his side. Then came the 4. They walked in as a unit, tall, composed, older than they had any right to be. Their presence filled the room. Marta stood, lips parting, but no sound came. It was Zaria who spoke first. Hi. That was all it took. Marta's eyes brimmed. Hi. Diane pulled out a chair, motioned to the others. They sat, slowly. Marta lowered herself back down, placing the scarf gently on the table. Thank you for coming, she said. Monica nodded once. We didn't come for closure. We came for clarity. I understand, Marta replied. You all have questions. You deserve every answer. Before another word could be spoken, the door creaked open again. A woman stepped in, elegant, in her early 50s, with a quiet wisdom in her eyes. Behind her, a man followed, tall and calm. Marta stood. Everyone, this is Lila and Matthew Johnson. The room stilled. Lila spoke gently. We didn't know. Not about the embryos. Not about you. We only found out when Marta reached out. Isaiah broke the silence. You donated to the clinic? Matthew nodded. Years ago, we were young, newly married, in need of the money. We thought maybe someone could use the gift. Lila's eyes shimmered. We never imagined this? 4 children? A full family? Diane asked softly. Are we your children? Lila shook her head. Biologically, yes, but emotionally, spiritually? You belong to the people who raised you, Monica, Derek. We don't want to take anything. We only came because we were invited. Zaria looked at Marta. Why now? Marta swallowed. Because I'm dying. No gasps, no dramatic reactions, just stillness and sadness. I have stage 4 ovarian cancer, she continued. And I knew if I didn't speak now, I'd never get the chance. Alan leaned forward. Why should we believe you? You shouldn't, Marta said softly. But I'm not asking for belief. I'm offering truth. If it brings you peace, take it. If not, leave it here. Monica sat straighter. What do you want from them? Nothing, Marta said. No forgiveness, no titles. Just the chance to answer anything they ask, to say things I've carried for 20 years. Derek nodded slowly. Then say them. Marta turned to the quadruplets. You were never a mistake. You were the miracle I was too weak to hold on to. I let fear choose for me, and I've regretted it every day. I followed your lives quietly, through news clippings, school articles, online forums. She held up the scarf. I made 4 of these before you were born. I brought one today. I kept it, like I kept hope. Diane's voice cracked. Why didn't you come sooner? Because I didn't think I deserved to, Marta said. Silence settled again. Then Matthew spoke. You 4 are extraordinary. Whatever questions you have, about genetics, ancestry, health, we'll answer. But only what you want to know. Isaiah nodded. Maybe we'll want to know. Someday. Lila smiled gently. We'll be here. Alan looked at Marta. You said Thomas chose, that he gave you an ultimatum. She nodded. And you chose him. I did, she said. But when he divorced me 2 years later, I realized I had lost everything. Zaria's fingers traced the table edge. And now you're trying to get something back? No, Marta said. I'm trying to leave something behind. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small black box, placing it in the center of the table. I had apartments built in the same city you grew up in, one for each of you, not because I think money fixes pain, but because I wanted to give you something real this time, something that lasts. Diane hesitated, then reached out and opened the box. Inside were 4 identical keys, each with a tiny engraved tag. May 15th, 2005. You were wanted. The silence that followed was sacred. Eventually, Zaria stood and walked to Marta. Without a word, she hugged her. It wasn't long, but it was enough. And one by one, the others followed. Not out of resolution, but out of choice. The sun poured in through the wide bay windows of Marta's townhouse, catching dust in the air like suspended glitter. It smelled of fresh lemon oil and faint perfume, and the quiet inside wasn't empty. It was patient. Marta lay curled on her chaise lounge, thinner now, face pale but soft. Across from her, the quadruplets sat close together. No one had spoken yet, but their presence said enough. They had returned. Not for answers, for something deeper. Diane was the first to break the silence. You knew Aunt Patricia saved us. Why didn't you say it sooner? Marta's eyes flickered toward her. Because admitting someone else did the right thing meant admitting I didn't. Zaria leaned in. Tell us. Marta nodded slowly. It was Patricia who found out what Thomas planned. After the delivery, he wanted to separate you, adopt you out to different families. He said it would lessen the shame. I refused. You still left, Alan said, but softer this time. I did, she admitted, but not before calling Patricia. I told her to stop him, to make sure you stayed together, and she did. She exhaled weakly. She filed an injunction, contacted social workers, ensured emergency custody was handled by someone willing to keep you whole. Isaiah blinked. And that's how Dr. James got involved. Marta nodded. My cousin, Evelyn. Zaria's mouth dropped slightly. Monica's sister. Yes, Marta said, which means your stories were always connected. You just didn't know it. A stunned hush filled the room. It was Diane who smiled first. That sounds like fate. Marta coughed lightly. Or divine guilt management. They all laughed unexpectedly. It wasn't joy, but it wasn't sorrow either. It was something human. Alan reached into his backpack and pulled out a folder. We brought something too, he said. Letters, from us, for when you can't talk anymore. Marta touched the folder with shaking fingers. Zaria added gently, You gave us apartments. We wanted to give you something that lasts, too. Tears slipped down Marta's cheeks. You know, she said, looking at all 4 of them. For years, I lived like I was dying, but today, I feel like I've finally done one thing right. She looked out the window. After I'm gone, I want the 4 of you to keep one thing, that treehouse, behind the old property. It's still there. Isaiah raised an eyebrow. The one you built for us, even though we never used it? Yes, Marta said. Because I always hoped, and I want it to be your place now. A place that came from nothing but love. There was a long pause. Zaria leaned her head on Diane's shoulder. Diane reached for Marta's hand. We'll visit, she whispered. Even after. Marta nodded, her breathing shallow but steady. Just leave something there each time, a note, a flower, a memory. Isaiah's voice cracked. You'll be with us. Marta smiled. In every stubborn decision, every hard choice you're brave enough to make, yes. They stayed with her until dusk. They left as the stars came out, and though none of them said it, they knew they would never see her again. May 15th arrived like it always did, wrapped in warm spring air, sunlight pouring through the kitchen windows, and the scent of Monica's famous strawberry pancakes drifting down the hallway. But this birthday felt different. They were 20 now, no longer just siblings, no longer just a miracle story. They were a family who had faced the truth and come out stronger. The celebration was smaller than previous years, but somehow more meaningful. Instead of one big cake, each sibling chose to bring something personal to the gathering. Alan arrived first, placing his college running shoes, now worn and fraying, on the steps of the old treehouse in Marta's backyard. These got me through 4 seasons, he said softly, but I wouldn't have made it if I didn't know who I was running toward. Zaria brought a painting, a vivid swirl of color titled 4 Beating Hearts. She propped it against the oak, letting the wind dry the last streaks of gold. It's messy, she said, like us, but still beautiful. Isaiah brought a letter, folded neatly, sealed with wax. It's addressed to both sets of parents, he said, because they both gave us something we needed, even if they didn't do it perfectly. Diane brought a single candle. She lit it in the center of the treehouse floor, shielding it from the wind. She used to dream we'd be here, she whispered. She built it long before we were old enough to climb stairs. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the birds, the rustle of leaves, the distant laughter from Monica and Derek talking on the porch. Then Zaria pulled out her phone. Should we listen to it? The others nodded. She tapped play. Marta's voice emerged, calm, slow, but full of warmth. If you're hearing this, it means you came back, and that alone is more than I ever deserved. I have spent my whole life designing perfect spaces, kitchens with symmetry, rooms with balance, but no design could fix the hole I created when I walked away. You filled that hole with your own light, your own love. To Alan, who runs not just with his legs, but with his heart. To Zaria, whose art reflects the storms and suns within us all. To Isaiah, whose mind could solve problems most of us never dare to understand. To Diane, the soul of your siblings, the glue. I love you. I never stopped, even when I didn't know how to say it. The message paused for a beat. In the drawer of my old desk, there are envelopes, one for each of you. Inside are things I never said out loud, letters written over 20 birthdays I missed. Take them, burn them, read them. It's your choice. You're not just mine by blood. You're mine because I never stopped wishing I could be better for you, and I hope, wherever I am now, I am. The recording ended. Nobody spoke for a while. Then Alan cleared his throat. I'm glad she said it. Zaria nodded. Me too. Diane turned to Isaiah. What do we do now? He smiled. We live, fully, loudly, together. A week later, Marta's funeral was held under the shade of the same oak tree where the treehouse stood. She had left instructions. No black, no sorrow, no formal speeches. Just stories. So Monica told the story of the day she and Derek first held the babies, how Diane had gripped her finger and wouldn't let go. Zaria read a poem she had written called In Spite of Everything. Isaiah recited a quote from Marta's design notebook. Even broken patterns can make beautiful walls if you know where to place the cracks. And Alan? Alan stood with a folded sheet of paper he never opened. I came here angry, he said, and I'm leaving. Not fixed, but freer. She gave us life, yes, But the people who showed us love, who taught us to stand, to rise, to heal, were sitting right behind me all along. He turned to Monica and Derek. Thank you for being the foundation. That night, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, the siblings gathered one last time at the treehouse. They buried Marta's scarf beneath the floorboards, not as a monument to pain, but as a seed of memory, and just above it, they carved 4 letters into the wood. Home. 2 years later, Zaria's painting The Whitaker Tree was featured at a national gallery. It showed a family of 4 shadows standing at the base of an oak, with roots made of intertwined names. Marta, Monica, Derek, Lila, Matthew. Isaiah graduated with honors in biomedical engineering. His thesis was on genetic integrity in embryo labs. Alan went on to coach youth athletes, telling every orphaned kid, "Your starting line doesn't define your finish." Diane became a counselor, specializing in post-adoption identity work. In every intake session, she kept the same photo on her desk, a candle lit in a treehouse. And every May 15th, without fail, all 4 siblings returned to that treehouse. They left something behind. A ribbon, a letter, a shoelace, a drawing. And in the corner, that candle still sat, unlit but never forgotten. Because they knew the truth now. Family isn't who stays. It's who shows up when it matters most.